Hi, I'm Cobus Bester, farming here in the Mariesburg area, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about the history of the farm in terms of fertilizer management. And it's our aim to realize a full potential yield with as little as possible fertilizer, added fertilizer. To get to this aim, we started in 1971. And initially, the way we farmed might not have been as good as it should have been in terms of where we're aiming to go. Started off with about 25 years worth of monoculture wheat because the government supplied a one-way marketing channel for wheat, and that opened the way for producing wheat with up to 120 kilograms of nitrogen. With that nitrogen, we got around 3 tons per hectare. And then government announced that we are moving to a free market economy, and we realized that production will come under pressure and that we have to look at something else. It was on that day that we decided as a farm and I was on the farm for about 2 years when we made the decision to move over to crop rotation, initially cash crop rotation. We were in a cash crop system, and then one Christmas, a friend of ours gave us a matchbox with medic seed and challenged us to incorporate that into our system. We sat and thought about it for a while, and then decided to move across to a medic wheat system. And we are very thankful that we could make that decision. So nitrogen amounts came down that we applied to our fields to about 60 kilograms over the years. But ryegrass was still a major headache. And following a visit in 2006 by Dr. Stephen Powles from Western Australia, we've changed our cropping system. Since 2006, we've moved to a system that is, or call it a third system, 1/3 system, where we have 2 year medics and 1 year wheat. And since 2010, we've been doing this full out. So since 2010 that we've moved across to this modern 1/3 system, we plant wheat, and the year following the wheat, we have the first year medics that we call a dirty medics, where we plant a mixture of rye, soya oats and radish into the medics, and then just grow it out along with all the weeds that comes up and volunteer wheat of the previous year. That dirty medics then is grazed or used as pasture for our animals, and that is followed by a full-on medic year that is kept in a pristine condition, and that is our nitrogen factory that ensures that we produce enough nitrogen for the following wheat crop. But after a while, we also saw that even though you have 2 years of medics in the system, there is still certain areas or certain camps that needs more nitrogen than others. And we started looking at our soil analysis in conjunction with Wynand Bron, and we're looking at it in depth to see what the differences were and if we could find a way to access the potential in the areas where it was lower. So we started looking at the calcium levels of the soil, the help from Wynand, and we've started applying our nitrogen according to these levels. We luckily had a 2-hectare grid system in place where we use gypsum, lime, and apply it at a variable rate. This has been done from 2000 onwards, that we do the variable application and we keep our pHs at around 6. We've realized that when your soils are in balance, your calcium-magnesium ratios are at an optimum, you can get away with very little application of nitrogen fertilizer. This has been a challenge for us, especially in the last season, where it was the rainfall was subnormal. And with the previous difficulty we had in the rainy seasons, it was a challenge for us last year to give no top dressing of nitrogen. Last season, we applied only 9 kilograms of nitrogen, and we've managed to pull or take it through to a 3-ton yield with a 13% protein, which is really good for us. We also kept our controls that we harvested, where we gave 0 fertilizer, and on those areas we harvested 2.7 tons. But if we did that on a monoculture system 25 years ago, without balancing the soils and having our crop rotation system in place, we might have harvested a ton. Even according to my dad, he also said that it would have been a ton without inputs. There has been a huge improvement in the effectiveness of applied nitrogen and the delivery system from the soil that made this possible. So this is why we think that the animals forms an integral part of the system. That's why we use them to graze the cover crops, to spread the manure on the soil, have a positive effect through that. So we are firm believers that we should have a longer rotation system in the Swartland, just because the rain is so unpredictable and low. So that's why we only do a third of the farm in wheat. This third system also helps improve our weed management, keeping it possible for us to keep rotating chemicals or herbicides and not overspraying. So some of our fields only get a certain chemical once in 3 years, and that's why the first year medics that we have planted the cover crop into, we only spray once with paraquat in the whole year. With that and lowering our seeding rates, we are currently at 150 kernels per square meter. By sowing these lower rates and the lowering of the nitrogen inputs, we have seen much less impact from insects in the crop. We've also seen that powdery mildew, or in the language of the farmers around here, white rust, has gone down dramatically. So we were very excited about the way we're going, and I would advise any farmer, if you want to start with it, make sure that your soils are balanced, that your pHs are correct, and take it from there. And we also feel that it is undeniable that you need a legume in the system. Measuring of what is available in your soil is also a good idea, although we're not sure if all the measurements currently being done is so accurate. But there are ways that you can use formulas from Australia that you can determine what your soil is delivering from the previous yield, calculating it from the previous yield. It doesn't change quickly over years, so it's a thing that you can use from season to season. So we use organic-based fertilizer, Atlantic fertilizer, which is a chicken manure-based pellet, and it's about 60% chicken manure and about 40% chemical parts, mainly monoammonium phosphate. Along with this, in the mix is also your microelements. And to talk about the nitrogen application, we've seen now that where your calcium levels are below 600 parts per million, when the calcium levels is below 600, we have to come in after about 50 or 60 millimeters of rain with a top dressing. We apply it variably from between 300 and 600 parts per million of the calcium with a formula we've developed, which is very useful, but I believe this formula will need to be adapted to each farm in each area. So what this formula does is help you to determine the increments of top dressing on these low calcium soils, and it will give you an idea if it should be 20 or 25 per kilogram of nitrogen per 100 parts per million of the calcium that is needed, and if it's a drier or wetter area that you're farming. And then we use a rainfall chart based on about 100 millimeters of rain that we use to determine if we're going to give the top dressing or not. And then we've seen that especially on soils just below 900 or between 900 and 600 parts per million calcium. And then what we've seen now is that following 2 years of medics, and if the soil has levels of calcium above 900 parts per million, that it's hardly necessary to give any nitrogen fertilizer. We also don't like to give top dressings after the 30th of June. We only need it when it's cold. From the end of July onwards, when the soil becomes warmer and goes over 13 degrees Celsius, you don't need any added fertilizer because the soils are delivering it to you. So with this formula, we've determined that in a good rainfall year, like in 2018, the soils was delivering about 150 kilograms of nitrogen per hectare, and in a dry year like last year, it was more like 120 kilograms of nitrogen. If you take this into account when you're determining your nitrogen or fertilization program, you can save a lot of money. And I'm a firm believer that a farmer should know what is happening on each and every field on his farm, and not just randomly apply fertilizer and spray chemicals when it's advised. You should know and be sure that what you're doing is the correct thing.